Did you need me to get started?
I think maybe if Earl wouldn't mind giving us a kind of an overview of kind of where we're at with the two bridges, upcoming matters, and from there, I think once you kind of summarize, I think then people can engage.
So, do we want to do a short recap of that staff meeting that we had too?
Yeah, I think if Earl could just give us an overview. I know there's some meetings coming up, and then
okay, oh, the one that we okay.
Sure. Earl Haugen, Forks MPO. The two city councils had a joint meeting, which everybody's familiar, back on April 10th. After that meeting, the two city administrators and myself met to go with further steps, and we agreed on a 3-point plan. I recall what's coming on August 5th is one of those 3 points, and that is a joint county meeting. That's happening over at the Grand Forks office building, starting at 3:00 p.m., 6th floor. And that's specifically to have the counties talk about Merrifield and push to try to get movement towards further development of that project towards construction. So it's probably the first of many meetings, hopefully, on that topic. Another point that we discussed as staff was to look at some of the alignments or corridor alternatives that were raised at that April 10th meeting. We did look at those and produce a report on those alternatives. And then the last one was to talk about moving forward on the next study or how to move 32nd Avenue forward. And to that point in May, the MPO board did ask staff to present, if they were to move forward on 32nd Avenue, what could it look like, and could the MPO budget achieve that? And so it was presented to do a potential study similar to the Merrifield Bridge feasibility study that was done in 2005-ish. And that there was some budget ability to do that if they so desired. And in May, the request was to present a more formal work program amendment at their August meeting, and also draft RFP language. And that's where it sits right now. The joint county meeting is scheduled for a week from tomorrow, and there's August 21st would be the MPO board meeting.
Sounds good. We're done. Earl, is there anything these two city councils need to do for that joint county meeting?
Push the counties. I would say, in talking with their administrators and county commissioners that are on the MPO, there's lukewarm interest in pursuing a Merrifield Bridge anytime in the near future.
The 5th or the 6th meeting? Tuesday would be the 6th. That's what I'm
Sorry,
sure.
then it would be the 6th. It's Tuesday.
Okay.
Would it be helpful for people to show up and or send correspondence to you or to the county so they know that we are taking this serious and we want them to work their level best in moving it forward?
Yes, I would encourage all signs of support, all signs of importance of Merrifield to the members of each county board.
Todd, do you by any chance have a list of all the county commissioners in Polk and Grand Forks with email addresses to make life easy for us?
I will do that now. I'll send it out to our council, and then David, I'll send it to you so you can do it.
Getting to a 3:00 meeting on a Tuesday isn't the easiest for some people.
So we could manage the correspondence. We could collect it and deliver it.
That's fine too, or sometimes a direct message from each of us might be worth it.
Earl, could you discuss, once they have a county meeting, we'll say the county takes up Merrifield Bridge, what happens, what could you project happening over that 5-year tenure of the current MPO long range transportation? What happens if we really encouraged it, moved it along? What will be the steps that will move through in the next 5 years?
It would be, of course, the counties would enter into an agreement. One would be a lead county on the development of Merrifield Bridge. They have done this in the past, most recently with the Thompson Bridge replacement. And they typically will, for the Thompson Bridge, they did move forward with project development design without having known funding source for the reconstruction of the Thompson Bridge. It got them, and we've heard the term project shovel ready. They were benefiting from the stimulus package during the Obama presidency, that they were able to secure them that funding by having a project development that far along. So that would be, the counties would have to find funding sources to do the project development. That takes 18 months to 24 months on a new structure over the Red River, probably. After that, either if they have funding, they can go towards construction, or they try to find financing after that. They don't have it prior to that time period.
Earl, what was the cost share then?
The Thompson Bridge was 50-50.
50-50 between states, and then each county paid?
The generic cost split was 50% the Minnesota side, 50% the North Dakota side. How each individual county and state participated on their 50% details I don't know off the top of my head. And that's been the approach that has been in the MPO plan and presented to both counties throughout the past several planning 5-year cycles to each county on the Merrifield Bridge structure, would be suggesting a 50-50 cost share on the cost. And if you're familiar enough with each county highway network, the Grand Forks County system ends virtually almost at the riverbank on the North Dakota side, and there's maybe an eighth of a mile township road on the Minnesota side that connects to a county highway. But as part of their bridge approach, etc., it would span that distance on the Minnesota side to connect to their county highway. So there's no need for expanded county highway networks beyond the bridge itself and the bridge work.
And with that Merrifield Bridge, they've done the feasibility study, but no NEPA work or design to date. Is that
Right.
correct? Okay.
Or what's the timeline for like build dollars and things like that?
Well, currently it's an annual solicitation. Like most national competitive, it's 10 times the request for the funding available. In their write-ups, they talk about wanting to have these shovel-ready projects awarded, but if you are awarded funds, you have your typical 1 + 3 years of appropriation to get the project done.
You mentioned the need for the counties to come to an agreement for a Merrifield Bridge. If there was a bridge in town, do the counties still have the same one?
Typically not. Both counties are in agreement with Merrifield. It's part of their motions that they've passed, the most recent transportation plan. And as we've discussed about sites outside of 32nd Avenue on the Minnesota side, it depends on the site, because if you get past the flood protection system on the Minnesota side, you most likely aren't dealing with the city of East Grand Forks directly as the responsible agency. So then it's most likely Polk County then, but not automatically.
So 32nd could be Grand Forks City and Polk County would need to develop the agreement?
32nd Avenue would be inside the East Grand Forks flood protection system, so it would likely be the city of East Grand Forks and Grand Forks City.
Okay.
And those same build dollars are available to intra-city type projects now?
Yes, they are available to, I think you might be alluding to urban setting. The past federal solicitation opened it up to also being inside urban areas, or considers our smaller urban areas to be rural. So under that specific program, so many dollars have to be spent in rural America, and they broaden the definition of rural America to include Grand Forks, East Grand Forks.
There was discussion at our meeting with the two mayors and council presidents that we should not do anything we should do everything we can to continue to move forward with the Merrifield Bridge. And so that was kind of the thought of making sure that we don't wait for one to catch up, that we should keep moving forward with Merrifield Road Bridge. And then the other further discussion was on the inner city or the urban bridges Earl discussed, of looking at 32nd Avenue and maybe looking at other possible locations that would be befitting both Grand Forks and East Grand Forks, opening up that conversation. I think the other conversation was what kind of studies should we do and where should we do them as part of moving that forward. So there was some discussion with East Grand Forks that it's an and solution, and I think in certain neighborhoods in Grand Forks it's an and solution, but how do we continue to move forward with the harder part, which is the second bridge, the neighborhood bridge. And I think there were some conversations, David, on that. So if you want to highlight any further.
Well, yeah, I guess if you don't mind to just take a kind of step back and go through kind of how that meeting between the mayors kind of came about, is because I know there was some concern about some actions that were on the Grand Forks side as far as the potential for like a veto for a 32nd Avenue bridge, and that was in the news, and that. So based on that, there was some discussion about trying to get or at least from our mayor, to try to get a hold of the Grand Forks mayor, have a little meeting like that with the mayors and the council president, kind of see what's happening with that and what the I guess how firm that was and what our options were at that particular point. So then we had that meeting here at East Grand Forks City Hall, like I said, between the mayors and the council presidents, and there were some staff there as well. So the discussion was, if 32nd is not going to happen, I guess what were some of the other available crossings that maybe would be palatable and that would have a chance of crossing. And then that's some of those came out, and I believe the one that was talked about the most was the potential of 17th on the Grand Forks side. So I don't know if I'm doing it justice for what our meeting was there.
I think there was a discussion of Elks. Do we keep 32nd on or not? And I think it's just how much we want to move forward with things. If we're going to put in a lot of work and effort, and something's going to happen at the end, I don't think.
47 is designated arterial. And you look at all those driveways on 32nd and schools, that pretty well makes that not a good choice. And 47th, I don't know if there's one driveway that comes off the street. And the school's not till after you get past Washington. So people will divert to where they're going to go without going past the school.
I believe part of everything is Earl is 47th. That would be outside of the East Grand Forks flood protection, correct? So that would be, we would have less influence on that one.
So the discussion was, that we're moving for that MPO executive meeting where they're going to possibly move forward with some further study and discussion to have the councils engage on it before the MPO moves forward and maybe there's not concurrence in that. So that was kind of starting the conversation before the end of August so that we can become more well-informed. And this could be a start of that, conversation. And maybe with even Earl, with the planned program that you had coming back in August, maybe you could describe to everyone here kind of what were you looking at as part of that study, just to inform everyone.
Well, it's essentially taking the report that was done for Merrifield and that corridor and citing it for 32nd Avenue. There are two major differences, obviously, between the two. Merrifield is rural, so it looked at different more rural type issues. It also had Coal Creek drainage issue tied to it. When you look at 32nd, so the study wouldn't be looking at the drainage issues as in depth as it had to on Merrifield. It instead would be looking at the 32nd Avenue urban developed corridor and school crossings in the place of the drainage. But otherwise, it was looking at the similar traffic impacts, the traffic volumes, the more refined cost estimate, a little deeper dive into environmental concerns, although not getting through the NEPA process itself. And also the other big thing that it would do that Merrifield also did was look at hydraulic impact to see whether or not any structure at 32nd would harm the flood protection systems and therefore not be allowed. So that's the framework around which the MPO discussion was held in May.
I think the two big things that I see different is the hydraulics, because you're looking at a lower bridge versus a high bridge. And you're also looking at the pedestrian school safety, that you didn't have to look at the other one. Those are both potentially game changers. If hydraulics don't work, that changes a lot, whether you can build the bridge. And if we can't have pedestrian safety, that's a big deal too. And we don't know that, but there's going to be additional traffic down 32nd with the 32nd Avenue Bridge. What are the impacts of that? And how can they be mitigated, or can they even be mitigated? That would be the questions that we don't know.
David, you can correct me. I'm going to paraphrase Mayor Gander, and if I misspeak, please feel free to step in. I wish he were here today, but I know he's working this evening. Mayor Gander asked a very pointed question of Mayor Brown related to a 32nd Avenue bridge and whether he would be in supportive of a 32nd Avenue bridge or not. Mayor Brown maintained his consistent message, which is he disagrees with the bridge at 32nd Avenue South, that whether this council or past councils have made promises to the neighborhood there. Right now, I believe in Mayor Gander's opinion, there isn't the political will in the city of Grand Forks to try to push a bridge at 32nd Avenue South. And Mayor Brown, again, you can jump in as well. You agreed with him and that you didn't believe that you would be supportive of a bridge at 32nd Avenue South, and therefore it would be very difficult to get funding for a bridge at 32nd Avenue South. And at which time Mayor Gander suggested that we should voice this to the MPO because he didn't believe spending monies on studies for a bridge at 32nd Avenue South would make sense if there's never going to be a bridge at 32nd Avenue South. So he suggested that we should, as a council group, suggest to the MPO that they shouldn't spend their money on a study or series of studies at 32nd Avenue South, as well as we should take 32nd Avenue South off the table, and we should together, our communities and our councils, work towards finding a location where we have both the political will as well as the resources to put a bridge and the capabilities of getting a bridge in place for the neighborhoods. And so Mayor Gander has suggested north of 32nd Avenue South and south of 13th Avenue South. And so in general, we had said, Elks 17th, somewhere in there may work. Of course, Mayor Brown suggested 47th Avenue South was originally purposed in Grand Forks for a bridge. But again, that's just paraphrasing. But I'm going to be very clear that Mayor Gander said we should not spend money on an MPO study on a 32nd Avenue bridge, and we should direct the MPO to take the 32nd Avenue off the table.
That neighborhood, correct.
Correct.
They don't need to live in the uncertainty.
Right. So does that?
I think you did a fairly good job of paraphrasing it. Again, I don't like to speak for the mayor or the council member, but I do remember there too. I think he was very adamant then, as well as that if the 32nd Avenue comes off like that, that we identify soon,
Yes.
very soon, where the neck where it would work.
Yeah, you're correct. I think what you said was correct of what the discussion was. I think the biggest thing for me was if we keep going back and forth of 32nd or whatever, we're going to not move forward with Merrifield. And I said we need to keep moving forward with Merrifield because we need to get something done. Plus, you agreed with the mayor, keep moving forward with the neighborhood bridge and keep the discussion moving. That was my response out of that meeting, and understanding that the mayor said, yeah, exactly. Why are we going to spend money on this study if it's not going to go there anyway? I think that's where we left it and said that we'd get back together, and that's when we decided to have the discussion tonight. And I agree that if it's not going to happen, why are we going to spend the money on it? And I think we just need to keep the discussions moving forward to a solution in discussion, wherever it may be. And I don't think your 47th is going to work for anyone, especially when it's out of our purview of, the city limits. I think what you said, the north of 32nd, south 13th is probably where, you're going to have to look. And I know that for years, we've talked about it, and I think I said this to Ken today. We briefly talked, and I said, look what we did with the interconnect. We talked about it years ago. It was 08, 09. And then we came back, and we all knew we had to do something and work together, and we did it. I think we can keep that same approach and keep moving forward and getting to a point where it's benefiting both cities, both counties, both states.
I think I'll reiterate something that you said is we can't let the neighborhood bridge be a detriment to the Merrifield bridge. So we have to keep moving forward, and we, in my opinion, need a very unified voice to all of our county commissioners that we need their support so that we can all go to our legislators and tell them we are unified on this location. It's our top priority. We want to get that bridge done. And then in parallel, we should continue working together to try to find a location for a neighborhood bridge.
I'd like to present a different sense on that. I agree about working together, absolutely, and the interconnect is a great example of what can happen when we do that. I've often felt that this discussion about bridges is kind of academic, hypothetical, because there was never going to be any funding anyway. However, the current national administration has provided us with many surprises. And if the Trump administration is successful in passing an infrastructure bill, there could suddenly be money available for this kind of infrastructure, and we should be prepared to take advantage of that. In fact, in some ways, maybe that's the greater possibility than getting money out of either of our state legislatures, but that could also happen. As far as, so this is important work, and we need to be engaging together. And if we can come together with a unified voice, that would be even better. However, Merrifield, as somehow this agreed upon default, with even the suggestion that Merrifield should move forward with or without a city bridge, is problematic for me. We're finishing up construction downtown, Demers, which has been designed to accommodate agricultural traffic. And the idea that we would make our largest infrastructure project a bridge that's so far removed from our two communities that would serve primarily ag, which is terribly important. Although we've allowed demers to be designed to serve ag, that we would design our most important, our most expensive infrastructure project for something that would be used for a limited number of weeks per year at the possible expense of the city bridge, which seems to me to be one of our highest infrastructure needs in both communities, is worrisome to me. Now, due respect to both mayors, but current authority has it, if I understand correctly, that both city councils now have a vote saying move ahead with 32nd Avenue. And even if the mayors were to both come forward, my understanding of process is that it would require individuals on both city councils who voted in favor of 32nd to call for a new vote. That sounds extraordinary to me, especially in light of the things that I've just discussed. I'm not sure that that's even going to happen. So I don't understand why we wouldn't move forward with the hydraulic study for 32nd to find out if that's feasible or not. Whether that's moving it ahead or waiting for the year, that's up to MBO. But that would be my sense of it. That currently we have an authority to move ahead with 32nd, and it would actually require something somewhat extraordinary to move away from that current authority.
I think we were told if we didn't pass it, there would be no funding for anything. So I think that's why the council said we're going to pass it, because there's no funding if you don't. Not that they were in favor of it, they wanted the funding.
Oh, my vote.
Correct my
Well, I think,
recollection.
well, go ahead. I was just looking at the data and I pulled some of these studies out, and we have a significant safety issue, especially on the Minnesota 4th. And to improve that does require a bridge south. There's very little improvement with the Merrifield Road Bridge to the issues on Minnesota and 4th. There's some, as I look at the numbers, but very, very little. You starting with 32nd is probably, I think, one of the better, but it could be north of that. But, you know, one of the issues we're trying to do is solve with this is the safety, not just at that location, but citywide. Now, you know, there is going to be more traffic on 32nd. That's why I guess I was in favor. Can we handle the pedestrian safety with a bridge on 32nd? And if we need to study that to know whether we can or can't do that. We can only speculate unless we have better data to know whether that can or can't happen. And the same thing with the hydraulics. We don't know if we can make that work because the cost difference between a low bridge and a high bridge is considerably. The original intent was to keep this as a lower neighborhood type of a bridge versus a higher level bridge, you know, artillery, arterial, yeah, bridge, is what we didn't want to see happen. We wanted to keep it, but it does, you can't question it. It impacts 32nd Avenue South. And to what level, we don't know until we do a little more study. So I thought, to make an informed decision, we just need more data. We've got great data so far. It gave me enough information to know that we just needed to take it to the next level. In light of the action that our city council has taken. So that's kind of why I voted for it, because I guess I looked at it. The benefit cost ratio, if you look at all of the bridge locations, is best at 32nd, though that's not the only reason why we would do it there. It does have to play into what works with both communities, and there'll be politics that'll have to be involved, which is necessary. But at least have the data so we can know how to make more of an informed decision.
When I heard you, Mayor Brown, say that you were going to veto a bridge on 32nd, the first question that came to my mind is, if we don't build a bridge, how do we fix the problems? The Kirby Bridge, Minnesota Avenue Bridge, is going to have an F rating. Minnesota Avenue, 4th Avenue, Belmont, Reeves, they all have traffic problems already. Your South Side neighborhood has been trying to do stuff on Reeves Drive to curb the traffic flow and that there, and I don't know if that's done any good. My guess would be that it hasn't.
we've got problems with Bigland Road on our side. So I approached that question to Mr. Haugen. If we don't build a bridge, what's the solution? And he kind of chuckled a little bit and said, turn 4th Avenue into a 4-lane road. I'm going, well, now we're really going to have to buy houses out and disrupt flow. So I pose a question. If we don't do a bridge, how are we going to fix the problem? If we don't do a bridge on 32nd, we do a bridge on 17th, I can guarantee you all those citizens on 17th are going to come up and argue. If we do it on Elks, all the citizens on Elks are going to come up. We've studied the bridge locations, Ken, what did you say, 4 times now? We've studied the locations, and every time 32nd has come up as that's your best alternative to put a bridge on. This time we added 47th because Mr. Sandy asked it, so we said, yeah, let's look at it.
Which is designed for it to be an arterial.
But 47th, your cost to benefit ratio is so low, you're never going to get any federal funding for it. And that's one of the reasons why that one was thrown out.
Our planning department has been asleep at the wheel because they're supposed to have a bridge every mile when you have 2 communities that connect. So we should have had planned, this is going to be an arterial, this is going to be arterial, and we haven't. So then all of a sudden we have all this here, which is not, it's not ideal. You know, it'd be fun to count the driveways and see, and the schools, and see what's the least impact.
I tend to agree with Mr. Veen and Mr. Weber that we've got an agreement between the 2 cities and the 2 counties already on a plan. So let's further study 32nd to see, can we actually build a bridge here or not? You know, that's the question. I mean, we're all saying, yeah, let's, but maybe there's something there that says, nope, we can't do it there. And then that will push the problem for us.
With all due respect, Mr. Vetter, you know as well as I do that they're going to come back and say that we can build a bridge there. Because one way or another, all it takes is money, right? I think the question is the city of Grand Forks or is the mayor of Grand Forks going to go along with putting a bridge there? I think the answer to that today is no. And so with that being the case, why would we waste the money on a study when we know the end result is that study will just go right into the garbage because it's worthless? In my opinion, spending the money on a study where we know that we're not going to locate a bridge doesn't make sense. If we want to move a bridge forward, I think everyone's in agreement that we need a bridge. I think ultimately the folks on 32nd Avenue South have been sold a bill of goods for a long time that there's not going to be a bridge put there. And so I'm of the opinion that we need to stop looking at spreadsheets and start looking at what can we actually do in our community to get support for a local bridge. And I think that takes certainly a lot more than studies that talk about hydrology. We need to start getting public opinion. We need to start going door to door and talking to people. We need to start finding out more than what the actual dollars of cost benefit are, or what are the actual benefits to the people that might live in an affected area, so we can tell them about that. And so ultimately, if we have those discussions and we come to some sort of revelation that 32nd Avenue South is the only place where the bridge can go, perhaps the mayor, perhaps myself would change my mind. I don't think that's going to happen, though. I think there are lots of places where we could locate a bridge that may cost 4 times as much, but we can get public support for it. I'd rather spend 4 times as much and put it in a place where people are going to be happy with it.
Oh, and I'm the Democrat liberal big spender.
And that is true. You are.
Well, my point is the reason why we have MPOs is for that reason right there. It's because governments have been put on the block for so many years of saying you can't have the bridge to nowhere. Don't spend money recklessly. What the MPO group, I think, pretty effectively has done up until now is tried to take the emotion, try to take those the political expediency of a bad promise out of the picture and try to lay out what the ideal is for the community. You're never going to have something that ends up perfect. And I mean, you can, like you said, you can put a bridge in any one of these corners. None of them is going to be easy to do politically. I especially mean that on Grand Forks side. I mean, you guys have had to take your words been asleep at the wheel on doing this. And that's why from our perspective on the other side of the river, we've listened to this. We've heard 13th, we've heard 17th, we've heard all these things. And this is just another kicking that can down the road. And like I said, if that's the case, then we're going to have to look eastward, or we're going to have to look at something else. My goal is a great Grand Forks. And I think what I want out of this is a vibrant community that has connections, that is, I've listened to Todd talk about the future of Grand Forks for many times, and your guys' future is tied to being a service provider to the region. And I guess at some point you're going to have to do some sacrifices in order to get those. And like I said, pick one then. Give us which one you're going to do. Like I said, if you're going to be the one that's going to kill it, tell us where to go. And that's my point. Before we kill this 30-second, instead of saying, well, let's not do the 30-second study, let's kill it and then we'll pick something later. No, let's pick it now. We got all the people in the room. Mayor, you're here. We got council presidents. We got city administrators. We got everybody here. Pick a spot. We'll build it. Every one of those 17 we could make 17th work if you want to tear down a bridge. If you want to, pick a spot and we'll figure it out.
We picked it. We have a unified voice. Both councils have voted for 32nd. There's your unified voice. There's your pick.
Yeah, but your unified voice puts it at 30 seconds and everybody doesn't want to move forward with Merrifield. And your comment about not moving forward or moving forward simultaneously, it's what happened. It kills it. And that was my comments last week. Every time we do this, Merrifield stops, nothing happens, and we just sit here. Exactly what happens.
And that's the other problem with 47th is I know for a fact Polk County isn't going to try to build 2 bridges. Right? They've got one that they've been trying to build for a while, and it's gone nowhere. So, like I said, I don't mean to be frustrated. I'm trying to build bridges here, but it seems like we're getting to a spot where it's just, like you said, we just kick the can down the road, and that'll be the next bridge is a Merrifield bridge, and you'll have this giant gap, and next thing you know, there'll be the same type of intersection issues that you have on Minnesota 4th, that you have on 17th, and you're going to have them on 32nd. You're going to have them everything down the line. I don't know.
When MPO was doing the study, Mrs. Marshall had a neighborhood meeting, and everyone 47th was at that meeting and voiced their concern. They didn't want a bridge on 47th. And they looked at the data, 17th, Elks, 32nd. Everyone at that neighborhood meeting said, yeah, 32nd looks like the best one. Mr. Weber and Mrs. Mock, you both had a joint neighborhood meeting and looked at it. No one wanted it on 17th. No one wanted it on Elks. They looked at the data and they said, yep, 32nd looks like the best spot. 32nd, you never had a neighborhood meeting. You waited until after everything was done.
And I don't want to be pitting one neighborhood against another.
But that's
that one set
exactly
of children
what we're doing.
is more precious than another set. So we need to be working to make sure children are safe throughout the city and have transportation plans that address childhood safety everywhere, regardless of where the bridge goes. But the idea that suddenly a bridge is going to make that dangerous, it depends on how you build it. If you build it in a reckless way, yes, you can increase harm to the risk of harm to those children. If you build it in the right way, you can make it safer than what it currently is. And that needs to be part of the discussion as well. How to build a bridge that enhances pedestrian and childhood safety.
And that would go for any location we go.
Any location.
Any location. That has to be probably.
Because you're going to get
the
pushback
priority.
on any location.
Yeah.
So we
no
need to
matter
be
where we
addressing
have, it's
safety.
going to be not in my backyard.
Exactly.
And we have to try to figure out from a citywide perspective what's in our best interest.
Can I ask, Earl, how long has 32nd been the location for the intercity bridge?
As a formal recommendation, it has been since about 2001.
So, Mr. Sandy, when you say that, or maybe it was you, Mayor Brown, when you say that those people along 32nd have been promised that they wouldn't have a bridge there, where is that promise coming from if it's been in the plan since the early 2000s?
there have been lots of discussions with that neighborhood. They, 6 years ago, they filled the council chambers. 12 years ago, they filled the council chambers, talking about the transportation plan, talking about the bridge. And in all instances, the bridge hasn't moved forward. And again, this is my opinion. I think our MPO does an amazing job of building spreadsheets and coming up with data and numbers and dollars and sharing that with a very small group at a new meeting that nobody in the general public either can get to or even knows is going on. If we don't start actively participating with our residents about major projects like this, we will continue to have people that show up for meetings and say, nobody bothered to tell me. And I know 7 times, Ken, this has been in the newspaper. I understand that. That doesn't mean anyone actually solicited an opinion from somebody. They read it in the newspaper and said, oh my God, they're talking about 32nd Avenue Bridge again. Who do I talk to? I have no idea. I don't even know when the meetings are going on. So.
Right. I don't disagree with you. There's public outreach and then there's public outreach. But if it's been in the plan since the early 2000s and if they've filled the council chambers and it continues to be in the plan, they're frustrated with that point, but they shouldn't be being told that it's not
I'm
there.
pretty sure
correct?
if you call Doug Christensen and ask him what he told the neighbors,
True.
you will get a very good story about he promised them they will not have a neighborhood bridge.
Yeah, our first.
Everyone's welcome to call him. I'm sure we can drag him in here and he can tell us.
Except Doug has no authority to say that.
I understand he has no authority.
so-
That doesn't mean that what he told his constituents isn't valid.
Well, it isn't right. It is clearly not valid, but it isn't right that we can't do that.
All I know is, Mark, I'm sure I'm the one that everybody looks at and says this is all Dana's fault. I'm okay taking the heat on this because I've had a pretty consistent message that what those people in that neighborhood have been told over the years is, in my opinion, whether it's right or wrong, Ken, they've been told it by people in authority. And so when there was no neighborhood meeting held, it's because the people on 32nd Avenue didn't show up for the 47th Avenue meeting because they didn't think it was necessary, because they didn't think it was going to happen in their neighborhood. Which goes back to, we're really good at generating data. We're not very good at actually talking to people about it.
Well, I do think the MPO process, though, has, how many people showed up for the various input meetings, Earl?
Well, we had 4 general public input meetings outside of any city council or planning commission county meetings. At those 4 meetings, physically show up maybe 150 at all 4. We had it was 2 meetings with 3 wards. I think there were somewhere around 15 at the Ward 5 meeting and maybe 18 at the combined 3-4 ward meeting.
And I think our process, I guess we've always looked, can it be improved? But the amount of comments we've had online and the things that have been through social media, the word has been out. And we've gotten comments back, I guess, on the social media. Have we not, Earl?
Yeah, we had over 2,000 participants on the website for the plan update. And that our Facebook page had several, I don't know the number off the top of my head anymore.
So what do we do to move forward? How do we move forward? How do we proceed? How do we get this done? How do we keep Merrifield going? How do we do a neighborhood bridge? And I guess that's what we need to figure out. it's something that we all know it's not going to be easy, but you know, we all sit on the council because we want to sit on the council and do what we can do, and we need to figure out what we can do.
Isn't it already in motion? Doesn't both councils have approved?
But the comments that keep coming up is that you keep stalling everything, and that's the problem. And it just goes back and forth. Everybody goes back and forth, and it just nothing moves forward. It just stalls. And I think we need to make sure that we go forth and attend if you can attend the county meeting, and show them the support that we need to move forward, and keep things moving forward with the Merrifield, and we need to figure out what we're going to do on the neighborhood bridge. It's not going to go away.
Well, one issue that I think we need to keep in mind is that right now the focus has been on 32nd. So you're hearing from people who don't want the bridge at 32nd. But if you were to say move it to Elks Drive or 17th, I think you're going to elicit a very similar response from those folks. And I don't think it would be fair to not give them the opportunity then to participate, because that will completely blindside those folks in those neighborhoods. And I don't think that that is fair. I mean, I have various concerns about both of those locations. I'm personally not supportive of those locations, but if we need...
your ward?
Well, 17th, I believe, is too close to the Point Bridge to really benefit the problem that we're trying to address and to get traffic off of that location. And when we're talking about possibly a $40 million bridge, that seems like a lot of money for infrastructure that doesn't then fully serve both cities to the maximum potential. And Elks Drive, I guess I have concerns with the Myra Museum being right there. I don't think it's fair to spring that on people that live there. I mean, they won't have had any notice. And now you're talking, I mean, you said in the council meeting a couple weeks ago that you were concerned about it going through an established neighborhood, which I understand. And unfortunately on the Grand Forks side, that's what we have is established neighborhoods. But to move it to 17th or Elks Drive is also an established neighborhood. So we still have that issue. We're just impacting different people. So if the point is that we need to have more public input that is advertised as a bridge input meeting so that people will come and attend and say, don't put it here because I don't want it here. I mean, that is our job. That is something that we can do. From a legal standpoint, I think 32nd has been voted on by both councils and is legally in the long-range transportation plan. So I would assume that that stays until there's a reconsideration. But
Or there isn't a bridge built in the next 5 years and we vote on it again.
exactly. Exactly. So in that time span, there could be more public outreach done. I'm just not sure. I feel like we need to have some sort of matrix for how we're going to make that decision, because as you said, we're really good at putting it on paper. We're really good at calculating a cost benefit ratio, but that's what's been done. And we keep having one location kind of rise to the top.
Right.
And you're saying that that's not the location. So I think
All I'm saying is we haven't taken, in my opinion, the human aspect, the political aspect. We haven't done a good job of engaging with our citizens, especially those that have already been sold a bill of goods. That's just my opinion. I certainly won't, I don't have any ill will if MPO decides, if you guys think it's okay or a good idea to spend a few $100,000 doing a study on 32nd Avenue South, more power to you. If and when the time comes to spend money on a bridge or anything further, I don't think there's going to be funding for it. Which is why I simply suggested, in my opinion, we should, instead of spending any time or money doing that, we should form a subcommittee of council members from Grand Forks and East Grand Forks and actually start looking at areas between 32nd Avenue South and 13th Avenue South where perhaps we can get some political will to get the job done, and then start going out and talking to people. That's just my opinion.
We do have that committee that's to work on the MPO. We have
Well, then in my opinion, the MPO needs to go start knocking on doors.
So why is 47th designated as an arterial if it's not in the mix? Why is it even, there's no driveways, it's wide,
It's great on our side, it just doesn't work in Minnesota.
so you're driving an extra block, 3 blocks, 4 blocks? This is our side of the river. I drive an extra mile to avoid traffic. I go down 47th to avoid 32nd.
What Mark was trying to say earlier, Brett, is if there continues to be a non-unified voice, even though we have, both cities have approved a long-range transportation plan, if there are political figures in Grand Forks that are being negative to a 32nd Avenue South bridge, he doesn't believe that we'll get support from the counties to get anything done if we're pushing that and the Merrifield Bridge at the same time. Which is why having a unified voice on the Merrifield Bridge and then perhaps quietly working together on a neighborhood bridge would be a better political concept than moving 32nd and Merrifield forward and having me and the mayor bad-mouthing the whole process in the press.
Just stop doing that.
I suppose.
That's what we really need.
I suppose I can do that. I'm going to get myself appointed to the MPO next time around.
But we spend the money on the Merrifield Bridge. It's hard enough to find money for one bridge. Is it even remotely possible to get money for 2? So if we can only have one bridge, my priority would be the city bridge. Then one. What does Merrifield serve in relation to a city bridge? It seems like
traffic, and you say
we've just done demers so there won't be drunk college students jumping on beat trucks, and we set that all up.
How do you say that isn't going to happen? What makes you say that's not going to happen?
Drunk college students jumping on?
Yeah.
Well, we've made
If
it
they
harder.
could do it before, why won't they do it?
Yes. I don't think it actually happens, but that's another discussion. We've designed for the next decades demers to handle this. So why would we put all of our money on one bridge that's not going to serve our communities?
I don't
as
think we
fully?
designed demers to handle beat trucks all night. That was not how we did it.
Yeah, we had the council meeting where all of the farmers came in to argue about bump outs. And
Right, I
we
agree.
changed our design so that
agree.
they
To
could
accommodate
get
It's
these
not
through
our
this.
intent. Our intent is to get the agricultural traffic away from downtown.
It would be best, but we have also a safety issue with the additional, I mean, it shows right now, Minnesota and 4th, we have 585. And without the no build, that goes up to 12,652 ADT, average daily traffic. That is huge what's going to happen in that area. We have a right and a responsibility to try to figure out how to keep people safe. And that's what we're trying to do. And it doesn't come, without some stress and some other issues here, but what are we going to do? And that doesn't improve with the Merrifield Road Bridge. It's very little impact up there with the Merrifield Road Bridge. If you look at the numbers, and the numbers are critical because we can't design on what we wish. It's what we have for good data. And data is going to support whether we can do it. Data is going to tell us whether we can even put one in, a low bridge, because of the hydraulics. We don't know that. So even if we did have us get together and have neighborhoods there, we still need the data. That's why I'm saying let the MPO get at least this level of data as we move forward. It could prove it can't be used, and then we have to go to something else. We just don't know. And that's all we're trying to do is find that sooner rather than later. Because if we find that out, then maybe we can tell the people at 32nd that it isn't going to go there because it isn't supported. And that's all we're trying to do here with the MPO.
Question for the engineers, maybe. if you do the study, and specifically on the hydrology stuff, not necessarily school safety or whatever, how transportable is that to other corridors? Say, I mean, if you're talking about a bridge at a certain elevation, anywhere within a 2-mile corridor, it probably has, I guess, depending on meanders or whatever, but it has a fairly similar hydrological impact, I would imagine, or no?
In my opinion, I'm not sure I have one exactly because so much of it depends on the space you have, like between the levees. You know, like at 47th, you don't have a levee on the east side. At 32nd, you do. At 17th, it gets narrower. So I think it would give you an indication. It depends on the order of magnitude about how the numbers come out. But I wouldn't want to suggest that it's particularly transportable, at least in my opinion. Too many unknowns in my mind to say that.
That's fine. That's
It's a good question. I've pondered it myself. I don't have a good answer.
Is there a decision point for us tonight, or is this just kind of posturing in anticipation of the August 6th meeting?
Earl, when is the MPO executive board meeting again?
21st.
21st.
That's the next decision point, right?
Yeah. Right now, you've approved a plan. You would have needed to come back to the next successive council meeting to modify it. So really short of something coming back for action to city council, you're not going to have another bite at the apple. But part of staff is we just want to make sure before we move forward that there's some alignment, right? There is something to move forward with right now. We're supposed to follow the policymakers' wishes. And if we don't, it's at our own risk, right? If we don't. And so right now, I agree that it is official position, but there's more, after the fact, there was more conversation that I need to be frank. We passed the plan, and then in this case, that a lot of the public input came in. It would have been better to have that beforehand. So I think that if you're going to criticize, there's some criticism, I think, there. But we're in the mode of, it really is in MPO's court, it's in Earl's court here, but we're the city administrators, and we'd like peace and harmony and try to move things forward. And in this, interconnect was easier. There were a lot of win-wins.
Well, for your
right?
side,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it was easier, and I guess I would take that same example and flip it, right? I mean, for our side, this bridge seems pretty simple. Pick a spot and we'll build it. We'll work with you to build it. We understand that there's political downside to the Grand Forks side. I was here in 2010 through 12 when we had votes and we had people promising that there would never be an interconnect between Grand Forks and East Grand Forks, and that we were going to we might as well flush our identity right down the toilet, and all these other things that happened. I mean, so I'm not saying we don't understand. It's exactly that same issue, and I guess my point is we had to come, and it took a couple elections, I guess, and maybe there'll be elections on Grand Forks side that'll come back, and it'll be, heck no, you're never going to do it at 32nd. There'll be 7 no's against it. I don't know, but my point is you have to do what's right and not just what's politically expedient. And that's been my point all along. Is it took people losing elections a couple times or whatever, and they came back, and we kind of finally fought our way through getting that done. Because why? Because in the long run, to that service thing about Grand Forks, it's better for East Grand Forks, it's better for Grand Forks, for us all to have one central wastewater thing than 2 separate systems. And that's essentially what we're trying to do with the bridge. And we're trying to make it better for us. And I know every time we fill out the room, everybody says it's all about East Grand Forks, but all those East Grand Forks people are going somewhere in the Grand Forks. They're going to their employer. They're going to shop. They're going to, use the facilities over there. So it's what makes us all. We've been preaching the greater Minnesota or greater Grand Forks community for a long time, and we're just trying to make it better. And like I said, will it decimate each of the cities if we put a bridge or don't put it? No, but we're trying to make the right decisions without the political backlash. And I get what you say. We got to go out and face the people. Yeah, you got to face the people, and sometimes the answer is no, or sometimes the answer is yes. And it's tough. It's tough.
You mind if I guess I have just one, and I'm going to try to make this as staff friendly as possible because I don't want to try to sound like I'm a council member or whatever. I'm going to try to as far as staff, but when you talk about the interconnect, I completely get that. But and one thing that I think that I see on as far as the staff side of it too is that on our side of the river when we were doing that, what really it seemed like it pushed it forward was when we really couldn't ignore it anymore. Our ponds were at capacity, and we had to do something at a certain point. So, I think the lesson to be learned on that here is as far as this as well is that when we get to the point, the traffic numbers are only going to go up. The bridge crossings that we have now are only going to get busier. The problems are only going to get worse. The only thing is with a bridge, we can't do it as quickly as we could with the interconnect. So when it really becomes a problem and something has to be done, you're still going to be 4 or 5 years out.
We should keep a motion, but I heard time. If I can, something to think about, it seems like, the public input, the discussions are very complicated. There's a lot of time and effort that got us to this point. And I think that to change that direction that's already been approved by councils is difficult at the 11th hour. Recognizing we're ready to start the next long-range transportation plan process over again here shortly. Something to be thinking about is perhaps that public input, should still be captured under the MPO communication plan, because I think that's the best and broadest place to get it. Maybe we need to prioritize that bridge discussion in the next transportation plan, so it comes in year, I'm going to say year 2 instead of year 4 or 5 in the long range plan, so that you get a chance to look at it here in the next couple years. Anyway, that's my thought on the public communication process. In the meantime, and again, this is maybe an opinion to Mr. Demers' comment and question. I think there's value in looking at a bridge crossing someplace, and we've been talking 32nd. I'm skeptical whether we can have a low bridge crossing. And this study may indicate whether a low bridge crossing is even hydraulically feasible. And so that part of it may be transferable from one location to the other, because that's a larger question than some of the smaller ones. I don't want to get chopped up in the discussion whether that should happen at 32nd or some other, but again, it's in the plan now at 32nd. The other one is I would like to, I think the discussions I heard, I think it's important to keep prioritizing the Merrifield bridge, because, again, in my mind, this bridge is something you have to look out at the next 30, 40, 50 years. We don't want to be caught 10 years from now or 15 years from now and find out that there's been enough development or other things happening in the Merrifield area that all of a sudden the Merrifield bridge now becomes a non-starter because of a public input. And so again, I'm looking at 50 years, not the shorter term. But thank you for listening. I'm just going to throw those little seeds out there to be thinking about, and appreciate the ability to speak up.
How big is East Grand Forks going to be when they finally do this bridge on the south? We're developing south, or you guys developing south? Are you going west or north or east? You can't go west.
Yeah. Currently it's been
We could try, but we'd stop.
Yeah, currently it's been to the south. Yeah.
So what's going to be like in 5 to 7 years? Maybe 47th is more palatable if you got community there. And
our long range transport. What is it? 2045. We're not even full.
Not even there.
Within the levy system. Not even half full. I don't think so. You're talking 21, 35. Serious. We heard that at the comments. Let's think 80 years down the road. Well, that's fine, but East Grand Forks doesn't necessarily keep a pace with Grand Forks as you go. You're probably going to be dealing with Crookston or something like that down the way further. But yeah, I think is that accurate? Our long range plan doesn't, or land use plan doesn't show.
That's accurate. Your
Okay.
land use plan doesn't show the growth even to the south ring dike system by 2045.
I think Grand Forks has an interest, our flood boundary is Merrifield Road in the diversion to the west. So I mean, that's where our city's gonna grow, and you're gonna grow to in and around that 32nd Avenue South area where your flood protection ends, plus or minus, right? So I think those are what we can foresee are the limits, because to go beyond that require a significant infrastructure project to protect those areas. So I still think we're within those boundaries as we move forward.
It's only a mile away now.
Earl, any suggestions on? You're going to have a recommendation, or from hearing the discussion, any assistance you could provide on alternatives that would help solve this issue where we're at right now, other than what's on the table?
Well, the only magical item of August for the board meeting was they wanted to act as quick as possible, but from a work program flow, etc., the decision is not critical that it be made in August to get the work program in motion. It is a work program on a calendar year. The way it's set up right now is that if they were to approve a motion in August, we as staff really wouldn't be doing much on that issue until 2020, the start of 2020. So there is some time that a decision doesn't have to be made in August to allow some of the discussion to continue on if there's need to discuss. There are about 15 criteria that were in the plan that were used to help select. Of the 4 locations we looked at for the intercity bridge that rose 32nd to the top, I could rehash in a more simpler format what those 15 points were and how the individual bridges sort of ranked against each other to those criteria as a reprimer of the discussion that took place for the last 2 years. And there's still work that has to be done. Either could probably get it done before August. I'm sure they would prefer, if there were able, my state and federal partners, more time to digest the work program amendment and the possible RFP scope of work. Your staff would probably appreciate a little more review time of draft RFP as well. So that's just the fact that August is, from the staff's perspective and our workflow of our fund and our work activities, isn't critical that they make a decision in August on the work program to be changed. The 2020 work program does have a big chunk of money reserved to look at the city's bus route system in relationship to a UND merger. That was set up with the assumption that CAT would be operating UND shuttles coming this end of this month. That study is not progressing, or UND is not able to get that off the ground, so that's delayed a year. So there's that work that we wouldn't be doing in 2020 already in our work program.
What would help you to engage, say we delayed things to further discuss it? Is it best to do through the MPO group, or we have this group? We could create another ad hoc group to keep the conversation going, to keep moving forward with Merrifield, but at the same time, in the spirit of cooperation, we'd still be moving forward with the inner city neighborhood bridge and just extending the conversation and trying to meet some sort of end before the end of this year, so that there could be a work to be done in 2020. How best to keep engaging on the neighborhood bridge?
Either the MPO board or this group. I don't know if the
sewage guys, are interested in.
We just want to-
Depends where they live.
Todd, at our joint city council meeting, what would you say the percentage was of Grand Forks versus East Grand Forks in the room? It was heavily Grand Forks, right? And it was heavily 32nd Avenue South, right? There were a few people from East Grand Forks that were there and spoke and were positive. But the vast, and there were a few from Grand Forks that spoke that were positive. But the vast majority were Grand Forks negative. What if we held another joint council meeting and suggested, just for the sake of argument, 17th Avenue and Peabody neighborhoods, and invited people to come in and visit?
Pitting neighborhood after neighborhood isn't good process. It's not a good way to make policy. And that's what it could end up being. I mean, you could organize the folks out on 32nd, and I could organize the people in the near south, and we could duke it out and see if we could get a riot going in council chambers. I just don't think that's a good process.
Southend are much bigger and stronger than
The butt
I'm just trying to come up with ideas of concepts of soliciting public input, right?
You know, the comment about public input, I get it, and we all try to be as responsive as, but every single comment that was brought up was addressed by the MPO. We've looked at school safety, we've been looking at school safety, we've looked at traffic counts, there wasn't anything that was surprising there. It was just a vocalization of people's id, or I don't know. I mean, it was just, that's what it was. It was people venting that they didn't want it. And we understand that too. But you're going to Brett's point is, if you do the same thing on 17th, we're all smart individuals. We could all drive down those corridors and see where the issues are. We know, like the mayor said, how many driveways are on the thing. We know that. We can count the schools. We understand that. We can see the traffic patterns. We understand those. Those are all the issues that were there. I understand that. You understand that. We're not unintelligent people. And that isn't to try to skirt away from public input, but all those things were taken into the decision-making process. We didn't learn anything new at that meeting. Not one thing. I forget. I learned why our Polk County Commissioner switched his vote to 47th instead of 32nd.
Which was why.
Because his daughter-in-law is the PTA person at 32nd. And spoke out against it. That's what we're getting at.
Right. Not good policy process.
Well, thanks, everybody.
Well, I think we have a process that we've been working through, and it's not been that everybody concurs with it, but we have the MPO, we have people from both sides on the MPO, and I think we tried to make an informed decision based on the votes that came from both councils. And that's why we are where we're at today.
And that's good. And again, I will have no hard feelings with the MPO if you guys decide to move forward, because I recognize that you're trying to make the best decisions that you can, knowing full well that both mayors who recently both won in landslides have both said, take 32nd off the table and let's work together and find out.
Who's our MPO?
The mayor, and I'm not going to put the words in the mayor's mouth, but I would imagine that if that was a contingent reply, if the mayor in Grand Forks was to say, let's do it, I would guarantee you that the mayor in East Grand Forks would be for 32nd as well.
Certainly.
If we were to have a public meeting like you suggest and say it was for 17th, are you expecting that people would like that location? Is that what you're hoping to get out of it? Or
Actually, yes, that's what I was hoping.
are you expecting that people support that location? Is there?
I think more people will support 17th Avenue South on the Grand Forks side than there will on 32nd Avenue South.
And how do you measure that?
I measure that based upon It's really simple, in my opinion. You have from Belmont to the river on 32nd Avenue South, you have a whole lot of people that have been living in that neighborhood for quite some time. And at 17th, there's nothing from Belmont to the river. And I believe, so I believe that you're simply, I'm looking at is purely in terms of numbers. There are fewer people by 17th Avenue South that perhaps would have an argument with the bridge.
And that would go through the golf course?
Yes,
Is that correct?
absolutely.
Okay. Have we ever looked at what the impact would be like from a city parks, from a public input on what that looks like going through that golf course? Or, I mean, there's the question to be raised that we can't put words in the public's mouth. If that's if we need to have that conversation was probably not fleshed out to that level. I'm just saying that I think if you're going to do it, you need to be prepared for, people who golf there to be opposed to it, and that they'll want to know what that impact is to that area, because I don't know the answer to that.
I don't either.
And if it's just person against person, like I think that's Brett's point, is then it's, is it 17 people on 17th Avenue versus 30 people on 32nd? And then how do you weigh that? Like, that's where it's going to come back to a difficult decision where we've been stuck for a long time. So if we were to do that, what do you hope to gain, or how do we measure that to best serve the public?
I disagree with Jeannie. We do put words in people's mouths. That's what our job is. We're representatives of people. We don't have a direct democracy where people go out and the best organizers that are the most affluent and have a well-connected social thing versus a less affluent group that doesn't have the ability to get off work and do all that kind of stuff. We do it. We represent our districts, our areas, our wards, our cities to the best we can. It's our job to go out and figure that out.
T-bucks and green.
I want to just say one comment. Whatever we do, no matter what it is, we would create a new normal. For those who've been around here a long time, you remember the fight they had of building the Columbia Road overpass and how that was going to be devastating. It was going to kill the campus. And instead we have an above-ground walkway. We have an underground walkway to help address pedestrian safety. But that was about as contentious of an issue we had with all the people on North Columbia Road that have driveways and all of that. So this is akin to something like that. Wherever we put this bridge, whether it's on Dyke or it's on 32nd, is going to just create a new normal that over time will be the accepted. So
That's a fact, no doubt about it.
Earl, the MPO meeting is on when and where, Earl, just for the record again, one more time.
It's always on the third Wednesday of the month at noon in this room. So it would be August 21st, noon, in the East Grand Forks City Hall training room, or the working session room.
I'll be happy to know I'll be out of the country.
They already knew that.
That's why we scheduled it.
My guess is you're going to be well represented here anyway.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, thank you, everyone.